my husband, myself, my daughter, and my son. My daughter has a disability. I'm a perfect family for corporations to pursue, for me to buy their hamburgers, to buy their cars, to buy whatever. But we cannot prove to the corporations that I will make buying decisions to buy from them as opposed to somebody else because they did or did not include people with disabilities.
Sure.
They did or did not make their website accessible. So until we can define that consumer behavior and get the data out there, even if it's by telling one story at a time, I think we're going to have a hard time really executing as a community, the community of people with disabilities. We've got to track that data.
Today I've got Debra Ruh with me, a multi-talented American who's a great advocate for people with disabilities, and for the last decade has helped multinational corporations and governments to connect effectively to the community of people with disabilities. So Debra, welcome. There's so much we could talk about.
Yes.
But let's start with what made you found Tech Access in 2001?
I come from the banking industry, in technology and in e-learning and training. And my husband and I have two now grown children, but our oldest daughter has Down syndrome, and in middle school, she just wasn't learning and like we were hoping that she would, and her options for employment, they looked very dismal. And so I thought, oh, I know, I'll start a technology company because I know technology and I'll employ people with disabilities. How hard can that be? Well, it was very hard. It was a lot harder than I thought. But so my daughter Sarah was the inspiration for starting the company, and it still inspires me. She's amazing and has so many gifts beyond her disability. She has a lot to contribute to the world. So it's about making sure that people could contribute with their abilities and not let their disabilities, get in the way.
What sort of services did Tech Access provide to companies?
At first, we really focused on pure Section 508 compliance. So complying to the Rehabilitation Act and testing, training, consulting, auditing. And then as we moved forward, because I started in 2001, and then as it sort of evolved and the international community started joining the conversation, or maybe I should say America started listening to the international community. We made it broader, and we started focusing certainly on what was happening with W3C and WCAG, and getting engaged in the 508 refresh, and really focusing on making every bit of ICT accessible. From web to hardware to software. We did all those different types of projects.
And the point of that was to make sure that everyone could use them.
Absolutely. 80% of my team were people with severe disabilities. So I had people on the team that were blind and deaf and hard of hearing and traumatic brain injury and cerebral palsy. And it was just a very diverse group of technologists.
Sure. I mean, and you won, the amount of awards that seem to sort of rain on Tech Access. Just two I picked out: the 2005 Presidential Freedom Initiative Award, the 2005 Lighthouse International Employer of the Year for hiring people with vision impairments. 2005 sounded like a really good year. I
did all this amazing work. I won all these awards, but after it was all said and done, except for the people I employed myself, did I change the world? Did the needle move to help more people with disabilities get employed because we were making websites accessible? And unfortunately the answer was no.
A couple of years ago you merged Tech Access into SSB Bart Group.
Yes.
You took on the role of Chief Marketing Officer for them, so handling marketing, communications, all of those sorts of things. One of the largest American accessibility companies. That must have given you a lot of insight into the organisations you were working for, what they thought about accessibility, why it was important for them.
I believe that the way that we change this topic and really make it better, at least partially, is with the marketing and communications, really building the awareness. And so it was interesting to take on that role and get engaged not only with multinational corporations and Fortune 500 companies here in the U.S. But also, I started engaging a lot more with foreign governments that were trying to implement the UN Convention on the Rights for People with Disabilities, or were thinking about it or ratifying it. There's still so much confusion about this topic.
Yeah.
And of course, you get different cultures. You have different types of confusion associated with it, and it becomes a very multi-dimensional opportunity / problem. What has happened, not only in the U.S., it's happened in the U.K. as well, and in Europe, is that we took a fear-based approach. If you don't do it, we're going to sue you. And you better follow the law. And it's a real fear-based. And so it's like, you better comply. And so we know that people don't change behaviors because of fear. They might change behaviors temporarily because of fear. When Target got sued, and it went into a class action lawsuit, I got multiple large companies that came to me because of that lawsuit. I remember one company that I had been courting for years, and they came to me specifically because of it, because they said, oh, we know we're a target. And the reality in the United States is that large corporations get sued all the time. There are, troublesome lawsuits. There are lawsuits that are not valid. We're a very litigious society. We put our laws on the books, and then we pound our laws out by suing each other. And that has caused us problems in America. But so it's become very fear-based. You better be compliant. You better be accessible, or the community of people with disabilities are going to get you. The sort of, who wants to be a millionaire? Let me pick which corporation I'm going to sue. Even the National Federation of the Blind, which has done, they've done a lot of amazing things. They started having some branding issues because people started seeing them as, the person that whips everybody. And they're so much more than that. You don't want to create a situation where you cause people to get further from each other. Sometimes when we do sensitivity training in the U.S., it sometimes causes a bigger divide, because I say to you, well, all right, you're going to employ people with disabilities. You need to make sure your website's accessible for people with disabilities. So now I'm going to give you a training class, and I'm going to teach you how to speak to a person with a disability. It scares people. And they start thinking things like, I'm not allowed to say the word see around a blind person because a blind person can't see. So what happens is, all you can think about is using the word see. That's all you can think about. And so it's common sense stuff. And so you don't want things to separate us. You want to pull together. And unfortunately, with the way we've been working with accessibility, that's what we've done. We've complicated it, and we've caused some divisions. And it's, a lot of corporations feel like they do not know what to do. And they don't know how to police this community. They're terrified of this community.
I mean, that's a reasonable reaction on their part. More recently, you left SSB Bart to concentrate on your work at Ruh Global. Can you tell me what the main emphasis of that work is?
Yes, and SSB was wonderful to me, but I love being on my own and being the captain of my own fate. And so I stepped back out in the beginning of the year and created Ruh Global. And the reason why I put global on there is because there's a lot of work being done in the U.S., but I think it's very important that we look at it from an international perspective.
Absolutely.
It's the only way that we're going to be successful. And so it's really about marketing, communications, and strategy. How do we make sure we're including people with disabilities in every aspect in the most appropriate way for those people, the cultures, the countries, taking everything into consideration. And also, I believe that this community of people with disabilities and all the stakeholders that are part of it, we need to have a better voice, a more active voice, a less siloed voice, and we need to do a better job of actually documenting consumer behavior. The United States, like other countries, are very economics driven. And we will say in the U.S. to corporations, oh, there are 54 million Americans and we control billions of dollars, and 1 in 3 households are impacted. But what we can't prove is that a family that has a person with a disability, like my family,
Sure.
my husband, myself, my daughter, and my son, my daughter has a disability. I'm a perfect family for corporations to pursue, for me to buy their hamburgers, to buy their cars, to buy whatever. But we cannot prove to the corporations that I will make buying decisions to buy from them as opposed to somebody else because they did or did not include people with disabilities.
Sure.
They did or did not make their website accessible. So until we can define that consumer behavior and get the data out there, even if it's by telling one story at a time, I think we're going to have a hard time really executing as a community, the community of people with disabilities. We've got to track that data.
I'm interested in what you think the kind of strengths and weaknesses are of the accessibility market here in the US. How would you characterize the market at the moment?
Well, the good news about the market is that American companies, government agencies, universities are spending money to become accessible. We have seen, even over the last 6 months, the amount of people that are spending money on accessibility has really risen to the point that we're having problems finding qualified people to actually do the work. Most of the companies are small. The biggest company out there is probably $8 million a year. So these are still baby companies when you think of the billion-dollar companies that we're servicing. But the bad news is there's not enough qualified people out to do the work because we have really complicated things. With tech access, we would go into these corporations and we would test and we would tell them what was wrong. We'd help them fix it. We would encourage them to put it in their processes, but they didn't. And then as soon as we left, they were out of compliance again and they weren't accessible. And that was discouraging because, of course, it's great that they're spending money, but you want them to have sustainable solutions. And so it was becoming apparent to me that the way that we were doing it was not going to be sustainable. American companies are trying to comply. They're looking at it as compliance. They are trying to reduce the risk of litigation. American companies understand this issue is not going to go away, so you better do something about it. And they're actually spending money, and it's good money. They're spending good, solid money to for-profit companies to do this.
But what's missing, if you like, is that ability to embed the right practices, the right processes within those organizations.
I personally believe that a lot of money is being wasted. And so if a company spends $250,000 to be accessible, and they get accessible, and then the next month they're not accessible anymore, I believe that's a failure for our community. I think it's a major failure, and we've seen that happen over and over and over again. We found that our federal agencies were getting traction, and then the stakeholders started retiring from those agencies, and we lost all of it because it has not been embedded at a process level. And it's great, we're harmonizing with W3C, that's all great, but it's still compliance, and I do not believe it's sustainable.
I've brought across the process-driven approach that I created initially in British Standard BS 8878. What is it about that standard that you think is kind of real value to industry?
The thing that I really like about it is the only standard that I've seen that actually encourages the change at the process level, at the design level. It encourages the testing and the quality assurance and the compliance. And so if we can't embed it, and that's such a good word, because if we cannot embed it at the process level, we will keep doing what we're doing now. We'll try, and then we'll kick ourselves out. We'll try, and then we're out of compliance. We'll try. And so, but if you can make it part of the design, which those standards do, then we can have success, and put it in the hands of the designers and the people that are adding content, and that's the only way that you're going to be successful. I used to think that maybe we weren't being successful because we weren't teaching accessibility in our universities. You can graduate as a web designer, webmaster, and not know anything about accessibility. But then even that, if we don't blend it in at the process level, it doesn't matter whether I teach you or not, because I've complicated it so much. It's all about perfection. And even with the Section 508 law, the government will say, are you 508 compliant, yes or no? All the time. It is not a yes or no question.
Absolutely.
But the government themselves don't understand it. It is not a yes or no. And even with the W3C, the WCAG, and you wrote a brilliant blog about that, you really are throwing the baby out with the bathwater the way we're doing it today. An example I use all the time is security and privacy. Are you going to build a website or anything else, a software application, that doesn't have security and privacy built into it? Well, nobody is going to buy your product if you do. I mean, it's ludicrous to say that. If it's not built in at the process level, we're going to continue not to be successful, which I believe is what's happened. We've got to change the conversation, and that's why I like the British standards, because you could actually do that. You could give it to somebody, they could actually implement it and make it part of their process, and then they could track it to make sure it remained part of the process.
So even though it's a British standard, it actually has application here in the States.
I believe it has major application in the States. If it was taken to the corporations, they wouldn't care where it came from. It would be something that they could implement.
Sure.
We have got to make it so that they can actually implement it. And right now that we're not doing that, what we're doing is they're one-off projects. We've really got to help corporations and then universities and actually embed it in the process, or we're going to continue to not really have the tipping point that we need to have to move this forward. We've complicated it so much that people can't be successful, and so who loses are the people with disabilities and the people that are aging and acquiring disabilities. And so the big threat is that we continue to do that and make it worse and worse and worse, and create a bigger digital divide. And so I think it's already here, and I think it's been going on for years, and it's getting worse. And as the accessibility experts and gurus and thought leaders openly fight with each other about this, it broadens that digital divide a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and the losers are people with disabilities, especially severe disabilities, and people that are aging, and we're already starting to see that happen significantly.
Would it be true to say that the corporations themselves are losing as well, because they're losing customers?
The corporations are losing, and the corporations are so confused. They are so confused, and there are some programs, some products/services out there that tell the corporations, oh, all you have to do is do this one little thing and you're done. And the corporations do it, and so they're putting themselves at greater risk. It is a little bit of buyer beware in certain circumstances. Corporations are spending good money to do this, thinking that they're getting the right advice, because they don't understand it, because we've complicated it. And so yes, we all lose. Everybody's losing. And some people believe that the way to correct this is to put more laws on the books. And I so disagree with that, because we don't comply to the laws that are in our books today.
Sure.
So adding more laws are just going to be more laws that we don't comply to. Instead, we need to embed this at the process level, and it's really not that complicated to do that. And the British Standards is a wonderful example. Just get everybody a copy of that, and let's do it. Yes.
Debra Ruh, thank you very much. It's great to talk with you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to the book.
This interview is one of 16 filmed to contribute to my book, Including or Missing 20% by Embedding Web and Mobile Accessibility. The book provides a full guide on how to transform your organisation to achieve the consistent creation of websites and mobile apps that are usable and accessible to all your customers at the most efficient cost. Find out more about the book by visiting hasselinclusion.com/book. Did you like this video? If so, why not share it with your friends? And I've got many more videos on their way with other accessibility experts from all over the world, so make sure you don't miss them by subscribing to my channel. Thanks so much for watching.